Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and getting some rest in between all of the hard work that you are doing. I wanted to just check in and give a little bit of feedback so far and some reminders and et cetera, et cetera. First and foremost, I wanted to apologize for missing the Zoom meeting with you all. I had the best of intentions of joining you, but as life would be, grieving is hard. Grieving is very hard, and managing it with children is triply hard. And I needed some time to focus on that. And so I wanted to pause and acknowledge that. And I wanted to also acknowledge and appreciate my colleagues for supporting me and helping you, Charlotte and Alex, for taking on the Zoom meeting with all of you and guiding you all through a very, very meaningful and wonderful 2-hour discussion. And for all of you for attending and showing up and connecting and conversing and really digging deeply. So thank you all for being present and for supporting each other, and to my colleagues for supporting me as I move through this process, which is very unfamiliar and foreign for me. I did get a chance to read through your component 2 and component 3, and I'm going to be leaning into your component 4 shortly. And I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that I noted in some of your hands-on experiences that really stood out to me. There were a couple just quotes that I wanted to read out to you, some ideas that I wanted to highlight as well. But I also just wanted to say some of you found some incredibly beautiful natural spaces that I couldn't stop staring at. The trees, the ocean, lakes. Oh my gosh, it made me really want to run and find a natural space in the middle of nowhere. So I appreciated living vicariously through all of you on your adventures. So thank you for sharing that and for sharing your detailed description of the places. Some of you are extremely gifted in the way that you describe things and your prose, and I appreciated that very much. Some of the quotes that stood out for me that I read, Monica said that it is imperative that educators deconstruct the idea of how science should be and open up the space to where the learner is, rather than assume where they fall based on our biases or privileges. And I thought that was really, really amazing to highlight and to acknowledge. I loved that quote. Dulcira, value how organic and fickle an inquiry process is. I loved that word, fickle. An inquiry process is so fickle. And it does kind of have this zigzagging all over the place nature to it. And I thought fickle is just a great word for that. And I loved that. And organic as well. It's a very natural process. And I liked that descriptor, organic and fickle. Posey said, understanding our place in nature. And I thought that was really, really amazing to highlight. I believe she also used consuming versus producing, but I liked the context in which it was used and thinking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the way I understood it, consuming information, like taking in information, taking in knowledge, asking the questions, but getting that kind of feedback from the natural world, from the places we're in, from our senses, from everything, and then producing. I think that she was referring to it in context of the different frameworks and how the frameworks set us up either to consume information or to produce something, such as with design thinking. So I thought that was an interesting way of kind of describing the frameworks. And then Carolyn said, she highlighted a quote that says science education needs to be relevant to students. And then she would like to say that education needs to be relevant. And I wanted to say, yes, both and. It's both and, where yes, we absolutely want education to be relevant across the board, no matter what we're doing in the classroom. Everything needs to be relevant to where we are with the children and where we are with ourselves. I think that the reason why we are highlighting science and STEM topics here is because those topics, I think, are among the highest rated that are not relevant and that we see most often in classroom as not being connected and not applying to where students are at. And so I think, yes, absolutely, everything needs to be relevant. And that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate idea, is to have everything relevant and integrated, connected in multiple ways. But I think that the reason why we're highlighting STEM in particular is because it's not currently relevant. And in order to do that, we have to become really comfortable in understanding those topics and those languages. We have to be very kind of fluent in speaking those languages to be able to identify for others what that learning looks like in the classroom and showing relevant experiences that are seen through the lens of science. I hope that makes sense. But I wanted to highlight on that and kind of speak about that a little bit, because yes, absolutely, both and learning the languages ourselves and being comfortable ourselves, kind of breaking down those barriers that a lot of us built up in our experiences with STEM subjects growing up, helping us to feel more connected and in tune with those topics and those areas of study for our students, I think is really important. Another last comment and note was one of the entries. Actually, someone had a difficult experience, and she was kind of talking about how she was visiting a space that was in memory of someone, and she didn't think that most people that came to the space knew that that was the purpose of it. And twofold, she also had a difficult experience while on her walk and wasn't feeling very positive in the moment. Yet the inquiry still came forward. And it was powerful for me to read because it reminded me of a couple of things. It took me back to the Living Mathematics article that we read in the first cycle, and thinking about Nepantla and Inlak Ek and reciprocity. And more specifically, Nepantla, this space of being in between places that are opposing. And also the TEDx talks that I shared, I believe in cycle 2 in the Science Nuggets by Eddie Wu, Math is a Sense. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I encourage you to go and watch it. He describes that math is a sense, and it was such a shift in thinking for me to hear that and to think about that, and to think about something so abstract as being a sense and not necessarily content learning that I had to overcome that I experienced going to school, but having it be a sense. And it really kind of made me think of a couple of things. That number one, inquiry is a sense. And in our darkest moments, in our angriest moments, in our lightest moments, in our happiest moments, we still end up finding ourselves in different levels of inquiry about different things. And it's emotion and life experiences and social connections and such that lead us to inquiry processes. And so it just really helped drive home for me this idea that inquiry itself is also a sense. It's a natural intuitive process that we go through, but we don't necessarily have names for it, but now we do. And then thinking about Nepantla in this space of being in between two spaces and thinking about being just, I'm thinking specifically about myself because I find higher order thinking right now very difficult, to be frank. It's very difficult for me right now. But also, I find myself drawn to it as well. And I feel like that space being in between two places still allows for the inquiry process to come through and still allows for us to move through these different spaces and discover things about ourselves and discover things about the world around us and think about even harkening back to design thinking, thinking about how we can improve situations, how we can improve outcomes for ourselves, for people that we encounter, that we are working with, or that we care for, or that we're teaching. It just speaks very much to the fact that everything is interconnected, and that includes all things STEM related, that they're all interwoven and connected to each other, and that it's important for us to realize that and name it and live in that space and own that space and put it out there to the world so that we redefine it for ourselves, for the children, for our peers, for our colleagues, for parents, for everyone, so that we can get to that point where we can just say that education needs to be relevant, where we don't have to focus on individual topics, but we can say, and we can live in a space where everything's connected and everything's integrated, where we can focus on that. So those are things that have been in my mind. Charlotte also created a video for you, and I've included it here below, and I'll type that in the notes as well. This post is going to be a discussion, so if you have any comments, any questions, any feedback, please leave it below. You're welcome to. And if you don't worry. I don't have any fun science nuggets for this week, but I do have a book list that I started last year. It's primarily geared for early education. And I've classified them in different topics, but again, everything's connected. So those are suggestions, not definitive categories. I'd be happy to share that. And just thinking about the rhythm this week, today is Sunday. Your initial response for the summative week is due on Wednesday. I believe 9 of you have already submitted your responses, or there's at least 9 responses already in there. I don't know if that's 9 individuals, but I'll find out soon. And your 3 responses to peers are due on Thursday. So there's a very quick turnaround this week. So please pay attention to that turnaround and respond to your peers. This is a week where timeliness is of the essence. So please do pay attention to that if at all possible, and make sure that you're putting your submissions in on time so that your peers have something to respond to and can engage in that dialogue as we begin to wrap up our summer. I will be posting, Charlotte and I both, I have asked her to give some final feedback for everyone at the end of the week. So there will be probably a final announcement with information coming out closer to Saturday with feedback, goodbyes, and all of that in between stuff. The in the pampa, the sad but happy, bittersweet. Sad to see you go, but we're sure that you'd love to have some summertime where you can not be a graduate student for a brief moment. So look for that. It will be coming up on Saturday at the very latest. And I wish you all a wonderful week. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, curiosities, statements, anything, any issues, please email or give a post in the discussion or anywhere, and we will be happy to respond. Thank you again for sharing your experiences. I did really enjoy reading all of your submissions, and I was so grateful that you shared your experiences with me. So thank you. Have a lovely week.